Okay, hello and welcome to today's session in the MSDynamicsWorld.com Fall 2015 BI and Reporting webcast series. I'm Jason Gumpert, and joining us for today's event is Noah Moseley of MSX Group. For those of you who don't know Noah, he's a veteran financial reporting consultant for Microsoft Dynamics. He has expertise in Management Reporter as well as Forecaster and FRX. He has run quite a few sessions with us in the last few years. He's probably racked up more sessions and probably more attendees than I would guess any other speaker we've had. It's always great to have him back. Today's probably no exception. We're expecting a really great audience. For anyone on the line who's also interested in budgeting, especially if you currently use Excel, I do want to also let you know that Noah is going to be back tomorrow for a session on using Microsoft Forecaster for budgeting. I'll post a link to that in the chat in just a moment in case you haven't yet signed up. I also want to just recognize our site's sponsors for BI and reporting webcasting. They are De Facto and Jet Reports. Thank you to them. And as we get started, please know that you can add your feedback and ask questions today using the Q&A block that you should see to the right of the slide panel here in the webcast session. And without further delay, please allow me to hand things off to Noah.
Thanks, Jason. It's good to be here. I appreciate that introduction there. And I do see the attendee numbers ticking up there on the right-hand side. Let me switch from your slide there to my slide deck, and should have that displayed for everyone. I have the next hour with everyone here for Management Reporter, Financial Reporting. Few slides I usually go through to get us started here. Jason's going to watch the text box for me, the chat box while we go through here. Let me know if anything comes in. A little bit about my company. I'm with the MSX Group. We are a consulting practice. We specialize in Management Reporter, Forecaster, and still FRX, and we handle that for all the dynamic solutions, AX, GP, NAV, and SL. We offer consulting services for these products, training classes, just like this one, and software support. So if you need me after today's session, feel free to email me at noah.moseley@msxgroup.com, and we will email these slide decks out to you after the session as well. I want to start us off next with just a general overview of what we're going to cover during this hour. We're going to have a real great list of topics for us. We're going to cover the basics for creating financial statements inside Management Reporter for you. Give you a really high-level overview and understanding of how to build a report and generate that for us. We'll also look at grouping several reports together in a package so you can run those all at the same time. That way you do not have to run one report, wait for it to finish, run another report in order to get a whole package all put together. We'll look at ways for distributing those reports out to your managers, and you can handle that individually, or you can have that sent out to them on a single report page, like a landing page. They have all the reports listed in one central location. All the reports and the data that Management Reporter uses for us is all able to control that use based off security. So we'll look at how you set security on different parts of reports and entire reports themselves. And we're also looking at scheduling some reports so that you do not have to be there to actually run a report. You can tell it to process every night at midnight. So that way when your managers come in the morning, they've got those fresh numbers waiting for them on their report pages. To get us started, I want to make sure everybody has an understanding of what Management Reporter does for us. So if you're brand new to this application, this is your financial reporting package for Dynamics. You'll use this for all of your financial statements, your income statements, your balance sheet statements, cash flow statements, trial balance statements, and any other kind of supporting schedule that you want to pull together from your general ledger data. Now, it is just general ledger data, so it does not go out there and pull in information from your fixed asset system or payroll system. It is just the general ledger. But when you run these reports, you can drill down to the account level details, and you see exactly what account numbers these balances are posted to in the general ledger. And you can drill down to the transactions themselves for those accounts. And you can also drill back into the GL too. And once you get into the general ledger, you can go to any of the other systems that you have access to. Very powerful tool here for your financial statements. Easy to pull these together for this reporting package. Data sources, it is limited to our Dynamics general ledger systems, AX, GP, NAV, and SL. The only other source that we can pull balances from would be from Excel spreadsheets. Those are your only sources. So those sources there are read-only, so do not worry about changing any balances back in the general ledger or changing any data in the Excel spreadsheet. This is read-only, so don't worry about messing up those balances in the sources. Quick note here about what gets installed with Management Reporter when you get back to your company and you're looking at your installation of Management Reporter. There are several components that make up this package. Report Designer is a standalone application by itself. It's usually a desktop application on your machine, and you use Report Designer to build all of your reports and to generate all of your reports, and also to control security for that data. Not everybody needs Report Designer. Some people will not need to build and run reports. They just want to see the reports that you have run for them. Any report that you run from Report Designer is available for viewing in the Report Viewer, which is also a library of every report you ever archive. Or they can also automatically see that same report in the Web Viewer. So any web browser that you're using, like Internet Explorer, can be used to view those reports on the screen. Every report that you process gets processed through the report queue. It's just a pop-up window as soon as you click Generate for a Report. Shows you the status as it processes, and as soon as that report finishes, it opens up in the viewers. There's also a migration wizard from FRX. That's not always installed for everybody. Not everybody used FRX in the past, so not everybody needs to copy the reports from FRX over to Management Reporter. But it is available if you're in a situation and you don't want to have to start from scratch for your reports in Management Reporter. Those bottom 3 points for us, those are more of the IT side. I just want to mention that so that you'll be aware of where your reports and the data are stored. Management Reporter uses a SQL database to store all of your report definitions and all of the report details that you archive. So that's stored in a single SQL database. Everybody at your company will share that one SQL database. There's also a middle database called a data mart, and that's kind of like a staging area between your general ledger database and the Management Reporter database. That copies new transactions from the general ledger every so often, organizes that, and prepares it for reporting. Security here, all security inside Management Reporter is based off of Windows authentication. So whatever users you want to give access to reports, they need to be set up inside Management Reporter as valid users with access to those reports and logged onto the network. So even though there is a web viewer option, any user that opens up a report has got to be at least using a VPN connection to your network so they can authenticate through the security. Now, if you do have reports that you need to get to other people who are not set up as Management Reporter users, you can export reports out to Excel, export them out to XPS, which is Microsoft's version of PDF, or print those reports. Now, if you do export reports out to Excel or XPS, at that point, they are just files. No security goes with those files, the Excel file or XPS file. So you can send that report that you exported to anybody inside your company or anywhere outside of your company. So no security goes with those exports. Got on my screen next a little few points here about building reports in Report Designer. We're going to look at that in the application, I think on the next 2 screens. But when we get into Report Designer or building reports, it's very straightforward, easy to get around. When you build a report definition, you have a row definition and a column definition that tells that report what every row in the body of the report represents. Is it going to be a header row? Is it going to be pulling account balances? Will it be a subtotal row? All those are detailed in the row definition. That report will also have a column definition telling what every column of the report represents. Is it a description column? Is it actuals? Is it budget or some other calculated column or anything else? Every report you have will have a row definition and column definition. Those are mixed and matchable and reusable. And reporting tree definitions, they're not always required. In certain instances, they are. If you have multiple geodatabases and you need to consolidate balances into a single report, you'll need a reporting tree to pull that data together. Reporting trees are also handy to consolidate or summarize any of your other dimensions. So if you have a department dimension, you can use a reporting tree for those departments, summarize those departments into pretty much any order you need to, and use that against, say, an income statement. So those are our building blocks, and we're going to look at those inside the application in just a minute. I have one slide left mentioning migration tips. Not everybody needs this information, but if you are in the group that needs to copy reports from FRX over to Management Reporter, this slide has a couple of good points for you. There's always some cleanup to be done. Either you do the cleanup inside FRX before the migration, or you do it after the migration in Management Reporter, but there's always going to be something. If you try to do it inside FRX before, here's some stuff you can get rid of ahead of time, like old specification sets. Some people in FRX had old test companies you can get rid of, any rows, columns, and trees, or report IDs you no longer use. So a little bit of cleanup inside FRX that you can do before the migration. There's some things that do not migrate over to Managed Reporter, so keep that in mind if you are going to use that wizard. Account sets, chain reports, and row linking, they were pretty popular inside FRX, but they have to be rebuilt and handled differently inside Management Reporter. So keep track of that when you're doing that migration process. After you do the migration, always proof the reports between FRX and Management Reporter. They can run, FRX and Management Reporter can run side by side without interfering with each other. So it's a good practice to make sure those reports tie out. And after you're all done with that, uninstall the Migration Wizard when you're finished with it, because if you run the Migration Wizard again, on the third screen, it will delete anything in the Management Reporter database and copy from FRX again. So good habit to get rid of that wizard if you are finished with it. So I'm going to take us now from the PowerPoint slide deck here over to the application and give you some tour of the application there. And as I go through, if you have questions, type those in that chat box on the right-hand side under Q&A. Jason's helping me watch those, and if they're relevant to something I have on the screen, I'll be glad to take those, Jason, as we go through. Okay, so I've got on my screen a report that I just ran before we started this. Jason, let me know if you do not see that on the screen there. And
we see it.
Awesome, thank you, sir. So when you're building reports inside Managed Reporter, you've got a lot of control over the columns, the rows, the fonts, colors, any company logos. You can have as many columns here as you need to. You can have as many rows here as you need to, or as few. So a lot of flexibility when you're building these reports. Pretty much if you have it in your head, a report that you need built off of General Ledger or Excel data, you can do it here with Managed Reporter. I can't think of one that I've not been able to replicate or create using this application. So if you do get stuck trying to build something, email me. I'll be glad to look at it and help you out. So I've got this report open in Report Viewer, which is one of the two options for viewing reports with Managed Reporter. The other is we can look at this report in the Web Viewer, and we'll look at that a little bit later. A few notes about the Report Viewer here. The middle section is the report itself. There's a left-hand section. I did use a departmental tree, reporting tree, to pull this data together. I do have a little gray area on the right-hand side. I can use that for charts and graphs or comments. I can always bring that section back by going to View up top and turning on the Fact pane. That pulls that back in there for us. So some extra bells and whistles that we can add to these reports. Those comments, they come in really handy. If you have, say, an actual to budget report and you've got to explain variances there. Someone can add explanations to the variances, and the next person that opens up this report can see all those explanations there. So very handy. All that gets stored in the SQL database. I'm going to look at this report in Report Designer next, and we'll come back to the rest of the stuff in just a minute. But I want to look at how it's built. When you look at the data here, you've got a row definition that defines everything from the sales row all the way down through net income. So all the details for every row in the body of this report is in the row definition. All the columns, from the description column all the way through the 3 monthly columns and the 3 year-to-date columns, all those columns are detailed in the column definition. We tie those together for the report definition itself. There's also that reporting tree for all departments at the top left. We'll look at that definition inside Report Designer as well. Okay, I'll switch back to the report definition. I've already got that open for us. So I am looking at the report definition window itself in Report Designer. This is the application where you build all of your reports and you generate all of your reports. Main navigation for this application is all on the left-hand side. I've got all my report definitions listed here at the top, and I've got buttons for row definitions. They'll all be listed there at the top. Same thing for all my column definitions, reporting tree definitions, and some other buttons. But all the main navigation is this panel on the left-hand side for us. Now, thinking about the report that we just looked at, there's a row definition, a column definition, and a tree definition that build this report together. So this icon right here will take me to the row definition to give us a quick tour of what is included in this definition for us. Every row here is detailed, so we know that if a report row, like the sales row, is going to be pulling account balances from the General Ledger database. Segment 2 is this demo database's main account number. It's got a range of accounts from 4,000 through account 4189. When you're building reports, if you can use ranges or wildcards, all the better. That helps reduce maintenance going forward. That way, if you ever add an account in the General Ledger in between that range, this report picks that up the next time you run it. So a great way to reduce maintenance with the ranges or the wildcards. And the wildcards are either a question mark or an asterisk. So a great way to use those to help reduce maintenance. Description column to column B, whatever text you want to type in here. You handle the formatting as well. Easy to format these, whatever color, font sizes, font styles that you need for every row of the reports. Format codes in column C, we use these all the time. These come in handy for any subtotal rows. I've got one row for net sales here. The format code in column C, TOT, lets this row know that this row has a formula right beside it in column D. And the formulas typically refer to row code numbers in column A. These row code numbers are placeholders, most commonly used in calculation references. They're just like row numbers in Excel spreadsheets. And you can change these to be whatever you want these to be. You can renumber these. They also renumber the formulas if you do that renumber option. It could also be alphabet codes as well. Format overrides, you can change the formatting for any row of numbers here. Like this row for gross profit percentage, which tell this row that when it calculates all the balances will show with percent signs and 2 decimal places. Excuse me. Normal balance columns, we typically have a C, or these are blank for these rows. The C just says that this row is typically a credit balance account. When the report generates, it flips a sign, shows that row is a positive for us. When you build these row definitions, you can have as many rows here as you need to. If I scroll to the bottom, I've got row 970 is my last one. If you need more rows, just use the down arrow key on your keyboard. You can add as many as you need to.
No, we have a question.
Okay.
So one person asks, what does the 250 in column D indicate?
So a couple of different ones. So this first one, 250, has a CBR code right beside it. So in my report, I can have a column that divides every balance by a certain row code. So this is row code referring to row code 250, which is net sales. So when the report runs, the sales row would be divided by net sales to give you that percentage column. So you can change that as often throughout here as you need to. This 250 right here, right beside the underscores, this ties this row to the 250 net sales row. And this report is set up so if a row is 0 all the way across, there's no balances, that row can be hidden so it doesn't show up on the report. So if the net sales row is hidden, if it's 0 and it's hidden from the report, I do not want those underscores to show either, so this ties it to that 250 row code and would hide that row as well. So great comment there. A neat trick to help clean up the reports and hide those extra rows that you might not always want to show up. Now, throughout the application, you do have pop-up windows or drop-down lists that will give you different options to help you figure out what you need for certain fields, like format codes is a big one for us. So if you know these codes, you can type these in. If you don't, you can double-click, and it'll give you a list of all the available options. So that little drop-down arrow doesn't always show up. It doesn't show up when you first open these up. You just have to know it's there, double-click the cell to get that list. A lot of different options, all the codes, and good explanations right beside those. Column J, I want to mention the dimensions. These are all referring to segment 2, the main account number, but you can double-click on that column J entry, and you can mix and match this between any of your dimensions from your general ledger. This demo database has got 3 segments. You can mix and match as many combinations here as you need to. So easy done. And this pop-up window would let you mix and match all these different dimensions. This same window, you can use this for any row of the report as well as any column of the report and anywhere in the reporting trees. So
No, we have another question.
Okay.
So someone asks, can you explain what the C means in column F and the A in column H? And
Sure can.
okay.
So in column F, the C right here is on the sales row. And if I double click, I'll get a list of the options. Only 2 options for this field. It's either C or it's going to be blank. And if you have a C on this row, it just reverses the sign on the account or that row and shows it as the opposite on the report. Typically, you'll have C's for revenue rows, liability, and equity rows. So the signs, the report pulls the balances as credits, flips it, and shows it as a positive. And you asked about the A.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
So in column H, column restriction, I don't use that column a lot, but if you leave it blank, this row shows up for every column of the report. But if I only want my sales row to show up in column F of the report, I'll just put an F here and act like a filter. So once you start filling in letter codes in column H, that limits this row to only show balances in that column of the report. And you really have to build your column definition first. So it doesn't refer to these letter codes, a little confusing there. It would be letter codes in the column definition, which we'll look at next. Jason, you have something before I leave the rows?
A question about column restrictions and how do they work?
Okay. Another one, okay. So let me look at the column definition next, and then we'll sort those 2 together.
All right.
Okay. So I'm going to jump over to the column definition for us. And when we look at the column definition, I've got columns A all the way through G. A couple of extra columns on the right. Don't worry about those. When you generate a report, those are ignored. You've got 3 header rows in the top here. Easy to fill these in as text, or there are some built-in formulas as well. And then you start with columns, the field for column type, and all the details for each one of these columns. I've got a description column in A. I've got column B and C pulling FD column types, which would be financial dimension references from the General Ledger database. Those are also in E and F. And I've got 2 calculated columns, D and G. So each one of these, whatever type you have, you've got a lot of different options beneath there. We won't cover nearly half of these today. But just to mention briefly, FD columns, you can pull actual or budget columns or any other book code reference you've got out there. Every column here that pulls data from the general ledger or from Excel could have a reference for the fiscal year and for the period for that column. And these are using the word base. Base is like a placeholder. Right before you generate a report, you select the period and the year that you want to run the report for, and that gets filled into these columns. So if I run the report for March 2015, that's our base year and our base period. That fills into column B. You can hard code or type in balances here, our numbers. So these columns would never change, but it kind of makes it less dynamic, so that next year you have to come back and change this reference to the year. So we use the word base as a placeholder. Period covered. Also for the FD columns type, you've got periodic. If I double click, I've got a list of other options. I can use year-to-date references, or I can also have beginning balances for the period or beginning balances for the year for these columns. So periodic and year-to-date are the ones we use most often for these column types, periods covered. Calculations, if you have a calculation column like this one, the formula goes 5 rows down, and it's just referring to row codes from the letter codes from the top here. So the variance just takes column C and subtracts the balances from column B, C minus B. A lot of different options there, but those are the main ones. I mean, some of the big ones. You have a lot of flexibility here for the different column types. In column H, I'll double click on column type. You get a list of the different types here. The ones that we use mainly would be description for the description column, FD to pull balances from the general ledger, and pretty often calculated columns. Now, whenever you build a report definition, you'll always have a row definition and a column definition. The reporting tree definitions I'll look at in just a minute. We did have, you did ask about that column restriction. I think it was tied to column A. So if I go back and look at the row, and A is our description column. Yeah, it doesn't really, this is a different one here. So this A is sorting all of these rows beneath it. So let me talk a little bit about that code. So back here in the row definition, I've got a code in column C for sorting. So you can sort any of your columns of data on these reports when they generate. You could even sort it alphabetically by the description column here from column B. So I've got on row 423 a sort code, and then I'm telling it in column D the row code references that I will be sorting. That's 430 through 715, 430 through 715 here, my expense section. And then on row 423 over in column H, this command says, okay, when you run the report, sort everything for that range of row code numbers for column A of the column definition, and that was our description column. So a little confusing sometimes there because that A right here refers to the column definitions. So you have to have that built first, and in that column definition, column A is the description column. So that section sorts everything by the text. Okay. This report also had the reporting tree. And we look at this kind of a split screen. We have the middle section, which is more of a graphical representation of this data. And the details for every part of this tree is listed on the right-hand side in the spreadsheet layout. So you can pick what company this data will be pulling from, put in short descriptions and longer descriptions, and the descriptions in column C are typically pulled into report headers. And then in column D, any filters based off of your dimensions or main accounts that you want to fill in. So if I ran this report against an income statement, row 4 would only pull back balances where segment 1 was equal to 200. Segment 1 could be like department code, so it's department 200. Just acts like a filter once you fill it in. If you used FRX in the past, FRX was based upon the full account mask, so you'd have a lot of ampersands and question marks and numbers filled in. A lot more flexible here with Management Reporter, and you can use any of your dimensions here you need to for filters. If I double-click in column D, I'll get that pop-up window. We looked in the row definition, and we had segment 1, segment 2, segment 3. You can mix and match any combinations of IDs for any of these dimensions here. Really flexible for limiting that stuff here, and account categories too, which typically you probably use account categories either in the column definitions or more often in the row definitions.
No, we have a question.
Okay.
How is the tree definition populated with departments?
So you can type this in by hand. Anything here you can fill in by hand. You could also tell it to pull in automatically from the general ledger by itself. So if I did a new reporting tree, I could go to Edit and Insert Reporting Units from Dimensions. Tell it what I want to include in this reporting tree. And it goes out, pulls back anything it can find from the general ledger. Or not just that, I told it to pull in all the segment 1 references, all the segment 3 references. It pulled in all the descriptions that it could find from the general ledger database. Once it gets this far, then you can go back and make changes or updates as you need to. But it is a way to get a quick start on building these reporting trees. And that was under Edit and Insert Reporting Units from Dimensions. The only other option is to type the stuff in by hand, or you could copy and paste stuff from, say, an Excel spreadsheet. Good stuff there. That should come in handy for you. Once you do have your row definition, your column definition, and your reporting tree definitions built, you match those together in the report definitions themselves. Open that report back up. You pick that row for this report. You pick the column definition you want to use and the reporting tree that you want to use. There's a lot of other settings here you set up for the report definitions themselves. You got 4 tabs across the top to help you with output and distribution, headers and footers for the report, and a lot of different formatting settings for this report. Before you click the Generate button to run it, on the Report tab, you've got the drop-down boxes to select for whatever period you want to run it for and the year you want to run it for. And then you click Generate, and that runs the report. And as soon as it finishes, that report opens up in either the report viewer or the web viewer, whichever one is your preference. So that was a quick overview of a row, column, and tree used for this report that we just looked at. When you build those are pretty easy to pull together. Just start with a row definition, go from there to the column definition. You may not even need a reporting tree definition. It depends on what you're building. And all those rows, columns, and trees, they're all mix and matchable and reusable. So you can build one column definition and you can use it in 50 different reports.
Noah, a couple other questions if this is a good time.
Yep.
Okay, one is, what about security and tree definition?
Yep, and I was going to talk about a whole section on security, so let's jump into that here for us. So security, for all of this data, all of these reports that you build inside Management Reporter, it's all tied to Windows authentication. So any user that wants to see a report inside Management Reporter has got to be set up inside here as a user. So you as the administrator have a button in the lower left for security. All your users will be either imported or set up here. And these are all Windows accounts for your network. Once you have all the users, you can then assign users to any part of a reporting tree and any folders in the report library. I'll show you that in just a minute. But typically, to help reduce maintenance off of security, I do not tie individual people to different areas or different reports. I'll make security groups next and then put the people in those groups and then I'll use the groups against the reporting trees and the library folders. So once you have all your users, I make my groups, add your users to those groups, and you can have as many different groups here as you need to. And then to use those groups for security, I'll go look at that departmental reporting tree. In this reporting tree, I've got a list of all my departments. Right now, anybody that has access to the report can see any part of this reporting tree. So anybody can see accounting data. Anybody can see sales data. Same is true for any department listed here. But if I start assigning security to the different departments, I'll go to the right-hand side here, and in column L, I can say that for corporate, I only want the group for MSX to be able to access that part of the tree. Okay, so you can set group level security or individual user security for any part of the reporting trees. And as soon as you start assigning security to any part of this tree, you've got to go ahead and fill in the security for the entire tree here. Otherwise, nobody has access to any other department listed here. So you'd have all your users and all your groups set up. You come through this whole tree, and for every row, even the summary level at the top, you'd have your users or your groups assigned here. Okay. And if you did go with individual users for different parts of the tree, list those in here until you get all security filled in for every part of this reporting tree. Okay. Once you have all that set up, when you run the report, these people may be able to open the report, but they will only see their department. All right, so you set your users up first, put your users in the groups. In the reporting tree, assign the groups here in column L. So a great way to control access to this report data. The next part is in the library permissions. So let me show you that next. So I'll jump over there back to the report library. I've got a button in the bottom left here. This is where we started off. I'll go to the library. And in the library, I've added several folders to organize all of our report definitions, all of the reports that we've archived. So if I have a certain set of people that should have access to this fiscal year 2013 or calendar year, I set permissions on any of the folders here. Got an icon at the top for permissions. Click that once so that opens up for us. Select the folder, and then you can add what groups or even individual people should have access to this folder. And inside these folders will be every report that you archive. Not everybody uses folders, not everybody archives reports, but you'll need this if you are going to archive reports. If you do not archive reports, every time you want any kind of historical data, you've just got to rerun the reports. So you set up security for each of the folders. That can be inherited to the subfolders. You control what access. Can they just view these reports? Can they edit? Can they make changes or delete reports? You control all those settings for any of the folders here. And looking at this library, we've got 2013, all the individual months. You would have ran reports. And if you ran a report for March, you'd have those reports listed for that March folder. Only the people you assign to this folder have access or can even see these reports. And once they open the report, if it uses a reporting tree, they can only see their part of that tree, their departments. So a great way to control security for all of that data. Anything coming in, Jason, about security before I jump over to groups and distribution next?
Let's see here. I don't see any other. There are some other questions, but I don't believe any of them are security related.
Okay. Let me take us over and talk about groups and distribution for a minute. So when you, as the administrator, design all these reports and you generate the reports, you've got to figure out how are you going to get these reports to the people who need them, all the managers, all the admin people, anybody who needs that report. How are you going to make it where they can access it? There's two built-in options. You've got the report viewer, which we've been looking at today, this application. So they'd have to have this application installed on their machine or on Citrix and be able to get to it and open the reports. The other option is for looking at this report with the web viewer. So if I just copy this link for this report, I'll go over to Internet Explorer. I'll paste in that link. You would just email them that link, and they can open that same report that is stored in the SQL database and see the data. Again, they'd have to have access to this report as an MR user. If there's a tree, they have to be set up with security to that part of the tree, if you do security in the tree at all, in order to get this far. But two readily available options to get these reports out to those people. Now, if I look at this report, this is one report that you can give your managers, but there's also an option where if you want to give like a monthly reporting package of, say, 5 or 6 different reports all on one package to your managers. So there is an option inside Manage Reporter to set up groups and give that set of reports out one time. And that is set up inside Report Designer. And back here on the left-hand side, there's a section for report groups, and that handles all of this package. You can set as many different report group definitions as you need to. Let me look at this monthly reporting package here. And inside here, a lot of different options, but we have taken 6 different reports and put them in this one group. You open this up, you change any settings like the date and the year that you want to run the report for, some other options you can change. When you click Generate, all 6 of those reports run at one time. And when it generates, it creates a landing page with a collection of all those 6 reports on a web page. And the way that looks, I'll go over to Internet Explorer, open that monthly reporting package, and it makes these reports as separate boxes here. So each green box is a separate report, those 6 reports that we put in this group. So these were already run. They're here on this landing page. You would give this page to your manager. They just left-click one time on whatever box to open up that report, and it just switches to that report's data. Easy way for them to get that. It doesn't rerun the report. The report's already ran. These numbers are static. They're just opening that report that you ran for them. If I go back to the back button, I can click on the next report, open that one up for them. They've got everything in one location, easy to get to. And all this is in the web viewer. If they want those on separate tabs or separate windows, they can do right-click and open that in a new tab or a new window altogether. So it's just an easy way to get all those 6 reports, that monthly reporting package, generated at one time onto one group page and distribute that one page to your managers. And if you do this, it's Internet Explorer. Your managers would not necessarily need Report Designer installed on their machines. They would not need Report Viewer installed on their machine. Everything is here through the web viewer. You would just need to run the group and give them that web page link. And you can just email that link to them. So a great way for grouping reports to have them all run at one time and distributing those out to the managers. You had a question, Jason?
Yeah, there are a few questions on groups here. So can report groups be created to print versus the web viewer, like FRX chaining?
So good question there. Every report that you generate, they cannot yet go directly to the printer. Okay, so every report you generate with Management Reporter, they go to the report viewer, the library, or right here in the web viewer. They both are available at the same time. So you can't click Generate for a report and have it go straight to the printer. You can't click Generate and have it go straight to Excel or XPS. Right now, it just goes here inside the viewers. FRX did have that option. They haven't added it yet for Management Reporter. I know it's a huge request, so we are hoping that they eventually give us some more options for output.
All right, and a question about scheduling. Can I schedule a report group, and what does the recipient receive?
Definitely. I had that on my list of items to cover, so let's talk about scheduling for just a minute. If I go back to Report Designer, and Designer is where you would handle all the scheduling. In order to schedule something, you have to build the report definitions first. You can schedule individual reports to run, or you can put those reports into a group and have that schedule as well. There's a button on the lower left for report schedules. And up here, I've got one already set up. It's our month-end report. They run it scheduled for nightly, so I'll open that definition. And in here, I've had a report group, the monthly reporting package. It's active. That's running. It's running on a daily basis. You can set this up on any interval, just like any Microsoft Outlook scheduling options, or by days, monthly, yearly, the start date, the end date. So a lot of flexibility by controlling when these report groups run, or you can do individual reports as well. So this is one report schedule. It's active, so it runs every night by itself on the server. You don't have to be there logged in or anything for it to happen. Then those reports are available to your managers when they come back in the morning. You can have as many report schedules listed here as you need. So if you have one report that you want to run every morning at 8 o'clock, that's in one package, one report schedule here. You have 5 others that you want to run every night at 7 p.m. That's in another report schedule that we could create here. So you can have as many report schedules set up as you need to. Good stuff there. If you did use FRX did have a schedule. It was not in the designer piece. It was available only if you had the server install of FRX. But here it comes with Management Reporter built into the Report Designer package. Okay. Be glad to take out any other questions about scheduling there, but it's easy to put those together, individual reports or groups of reports.
Okay, so one more question here, Noah.
Okay.
I think you might have just covered this, but can I, well, can I schedule, what does the recipient receive when I schedule a group of reports?
So when you schedule a report to run, it generates whenever the schedule is set up, and it puts that report in the library. Okay. That report is in the library. It's also available in the web viewer. And if you did a group, it's available in that group. So it does not send out an email to anybody. It doesn't send these reports out as an attachment or anything like that. It just runs a report, it stores it in the SQL database. Your people who need the reports in the morning, they could go to the library. Let me switch over to that. They can go to the button they'd open up the report viewer, go to the library, they browse out to their folder and check for any new reports that were out here. All right, but they do not get an automatic email or notification that there's a new report out there. If you do SharePoint, you can set a report so that reports add links in SharePoint, and then SharePoint can be set up to send out email alerts. But that alert will be coming from SharePoint, not Management Reporter.
And what version of Management Reporter do you have to run in order to use the web viewer for reports?
Microsoft came out with this. I think it came out in version 7, CU7. So that was, I think it's been out for 2 years now.
Is there a report book? And the person wrote it as capital R, capital B, report book.
So in FREX, there was a report book. You could have that with a collection of like several reports that you generated, and you could also add other files like Excel files for supporting schedules or Word documents. You can do that here in the library. So all these reports that we've generated in March here, I've got these 4 separate reports listed. So it's kind of like a report book from FRX here. They'd open up this library, they go to March, they see the reports, they can double-click and open up any of these reports that you already ran for them and archived. You could also right-click and insert external files like Excel spreadsheets that would be listed here as supporting details. So that's kind of similar to the report books from FRX.
And a couple more, I think, related questions. Can you put a link to the library in a role center?
Link to a library in a row?
A role center.
Role center.
Like maybe an AX
I don't understand
role
that one.
I'm guessing they meant like in the ERP user interface, like in a AX role center.
So not sure about that. I mean, if every report you have here has a URL link, so you can copy, once you run the report, you have the copy link button up top, and you could copy that link and paste it into any kind of document, Word document, Excel documents. If you have a place inside the GL that you can paste that link in there too, you could. If that gets stored in the general ledger, they click on it, they'd still have to have access to the report in Management Reporter as an MR user.
All right, great. I'm not seeing any other report group questions right now.
Okay. So we are coming up on the top of the hour. I want to jump back for a minute and look at this last slide here for us. I'll bring that down. And just want to mention that if you need more information about Management Reporter After Day, you've got our website and the msdynamicsworld.com website. Plenty of information out there. We help out with forums, message boards, training classes, webinars, and consulting services. In December, we are offering a half day of free online training for Management Reporter. It's our fall forum. Got a link there for that, and we'll have that in this PowerPoint slide that we'll email out. That's all online. You just log in. We'll start off in the morning with a basic overview. Then the next couple hours will be different topics. And we do a whole day of Management Reporter training in April. I have a link there for that, FFMR 2016. So feel free to find those on our website, msxgroup.com, and join us for those. All online, all free registration. We'll give you certificates of attendance for CPE credits. And if you need me after today, email is the best way to get in touch with me at noah.moseley@msxgroup.com. Jason, I'll go back and we'll take out any questions that you have in the chat box, Q&A, about any piece inside Management Reporter or any other topics.
All right, let's get to some more of those. So can I generate a report in the reporting currency?
So yes, Management Reporter lets you run reports for any currencies that you track inside your general ledger database. So let me jump back over to the application. Okay, so any report that you generate can be pulled back into any currency that you track in your general ledger database. So you can do it at this is a report definition window. You can have everything going back to one particular currency. Or if you need separate columns for different currencies in your report, you can set those in the column definition. So if I look at the column definition, for any FD column type that's pulling balances from the GL database, there is an option for currency display and currency filter. So if you want everything in column B to be converted or displayed as functional currency or Canadian dollars. Just make those selections, and when this column pulls the balances, it'll display the results in that currency. If you want in this column B to only pull back entries that were posted as Great British Pounds, it'll pull just those balances that were originally entered as British Pounds and convert it to Canadian dollars. Okay, so a lot of flexibility either at the entire report level or on the individual columns for the currency. And when you look at those reports in the web viewer, looking here in the web viewer, you got a report open. There is a currency icon at the bottom. So clicking that icon will let you switch between whatever currencies you track. So if you want all this converted to Canadian dollars, just switch that out. It translates that for you, all based on the rates that you have set up in your general ledger database. That may take longer than I need here. So take the next question, Jason.
Yeah, where do you choose the preferred viewer?
That is a setting in the report designer. So if I go back to designer here, and this is set by individual user, so whatever you set for yourself does not affect somebody else. In designer, you'll go to tools and options. And there's 3 check boxes. The third one down says use management reporter viewer as default viewer. If you check that, that's the standalone report viewer application that also has the library. If you uncheck it, that makes the web viewer your default.
All right, another question here. What are segments and how can they be configured?
So in this demo database, they're called segments, but they're actually dimensions in your general ledger database. They are copied in automatically from your GL database. I'll bring it up with this dimension filter window. So our database says segment 1, segment 2, segment 3. Typically, these would be named more specific. So segment 1 would probably say department. Segment 2 would probably say account, and segment 3 might say division. And those are all depending on how they're labeled in your general ledger. And this copies from your GL, so you can't really change it here. It's got to be set up in the GL.
All right. Can you add more rows in between row codes 550 to 640 in case I want some more accounts in the future?
Definitely. So if I go back to that row definition, let's say I have row 310 and 311. If I right-click and highlight a number of rows and select Insert Row, I get new rows. There's no room between those two, so it's just blank row codes in column A. It's an easy fix. I'll just renumber all these row codes in column A using Edit and renumber rows. I'll start with 100 and increment by 30. And when it updates the row codes in column A, it also updates all the formulas in column D. So easy to add as many rows there as you need to. If there's not room between the numbers, you can always renumber.
All right, great. We're getting near the top of the hour here. Noah, are you able to stay and answer some more questions? We do have several left.
Yep, be glad to.
All right, great. And to folks in the audience, please do stay around. Noah's going to take some more questions here. If you do need to leave, please be on the lookout for a survey after you close out. It's just a couple questions. It really gives us some good feedback about your experience today. We appreciate it. Our speakers always appreciate that feedback too. But moving back into the question queue here,
Hey,
if you want to. Yes.
Hey, a quick note also before some people do head out. If any of you are going to Reno next week, I'll be out there teaching classes on Monday and Tuesday before the user group sessions for dynamic communities. And if you're out there, I'll be there all week leading different sessions for Management Reporter as well as Forecaster, and I'll have a booth in the expo hall. So it's always good to meet people in person to kind of tie a voice to a name, to a face. So if you're out there, stop by, see me in one of the sessions, or visit me in the expo hall. Be glad to meet you there.
Yeah, great point. I'd be interested to know if anyone online is going to be at the UG events next week. Feel free to just ping us in the chat to let us know. I'm just curious. And getting back to the questions here, if you want a column that shows unpaid purchase orders and other known expenditures to the fiscal year end, how would you set up that column?
Okay. So let's see, we go to a column definition. Let's say we have a column that needs to pull financial dimensions, balances from actuals. Would that be an account number we're trying to limit this to? If it's an account number, we've got a dimension filter in the bottom. I can double click that, and it might just be an account number like 4500. And that acts like a filter for that column, so it only pulls back balances for that account for that row, that column. If was there other things that they're trying to limit by, Jason? What was the rest of that?
So unpaid purchase orders and other known expenditures to the fiscal year end. Showing unpaid purchase orders.
Fiscal year end, so I'd probably run the report for period. I can set this to period 12, so it's always the year end. You can use year to date. And when you run the report, you pick the year. So this column would pull back all the transactions for that account or range of accounts for all the way through period 12, year to date.
All right. Does every report necessarily need to have a reporting tree definition?
No, you're required to have a reporting tree definition if you're going to be consolidating balances from multiple GL databases, or if you're going to be consolidating balances from multiple Excel spreadsheets. Other than that, you're not required to have a reporting tree. I can't think of one where you're required to get balances. Reporting tree security, you can't do security on different dimensions unless you have that in the tree.
Could you discuss how to set up a report to drill down to the GL and transaction level?
Definitely. So any of the reports that you generate, these open up, and if you want to drill down to the account level detail and transaction level detail, it's an easy drop-down selection. I'm in the report definition window. On the main tab for reports, there's a detail level drop-down list. And there's three options. Financial is with no drill down. Just runs the report. It shows you the summary page, the top page. If you want to be able to double-click and drill down to the account balances, you have the financial and account, and you have the one for transactions as well. And if you want to have one for transactions, your column definition has got to have at least one column of monthly balances, so it knows what month to check for transactions. Now, whichever one you have selected here, when you run the reports and you look at those in, say, the web viewer, if you have the drill down, these numbers are hyperlinks. Just left-click the number once. It'll drill down on that row for the details. And it drills down through the reporting tree first. And once it gets past the reporting tree, then it gets to the account numbers. And if you had run this report for transaction level details, you could drill from this page to the transaction page.
All right. Is there an expected date for the ability to generate straight to an Excel file formatted to one page? This person writes it right now. It takes about 20 clicks, and they have about 20 reports that they have to run multiple times per month.
So when you run a report, there is that option for the viewers under report definitions, settings, and other that lets you shrink the page width. And I love that setting. I use it all the time, even if I don't have a wide report. But you're right. When you do export to Excel, that setting doesn't go out there. You lose that. Microsoft has that as an item that they know is requested. I have not seen any date for when they will fix that, though. So right now, the shrink the page width, it only works when you go out to the report viewer, not when you export. But a lot of us are in the same boat with you.
How can I set a time parameter for the update report in the schedule?
Time parameter in the update reports. Update reports. So if you have the schedule, this is active. It runs often you select here. This one's set to run daily with a start, date, and the time as well. There's no end date set for this one. What else were they wanting to, anything else they wanted to change here?
I didn't get any more detail than that, but if the person who asked that question wants to add anything, maybe we can follow up on it. There are a couple questions here about access to the presentation, access to a recording later. We are recording today's session. We'll be sending a quick email out to everyone letting you know when that's available and a link to it. In terms of the presentation itself, Noah, do you have any intent to make the slides available either through us or
yes,
directly?
So either you can email them out to everyone, or I can, either way you want to do it. But yes, we'll email the slides out to everybody today.
Okay, great. And we can, yeah, to your point, we can probably host a copy of them for people to download when we have the recording up as well.
Okay.
If you want. Okay, great. And so next question here, is there a way to generate reports and put them out into a shared drive?
Generate reports and have them out. If you're using SharePoint, you can put links in that any SharePoint folder. All right. But other than that, every report you generate, it only goes to the SQL database. Now, in the library, you can set up folders. These look like folders on the network. They are just icons or pictures that they're just organizing the reports in SQL, that one SQL database. But you can set up any folders here that organize the reports in SQL, and when you define the reports and when you run them, you can tell the reports to go directly to these folders. You can do that in the report definition window under the Output and Distribution tab. You can send it anywhere in the library, any of the folders that are available there. Okay, or to multiple folders. This box on the left, this is for the folders in the library. And on the right-hand side, this box, this is for any folders on SharePoint.
All right, next question. Can you talk about legacy versus data mart?
So when Managed Report first came out, there was no data mart. There was only that one SQL database for all of your report definitions and any report that you archive. So when you ran a report, Managed Report would have to go out to the General Ledger database, pull all the balances it needed, sort it, and then generate the report. And the data in the General Ledger is not necessarily organized for reporting purposes. So it took a long time for a lot of report data to be processed. So later on, Microsoft came up with the data mart, that middle database that every so often goes out to the GL, copies new transactions, organizes it for reporting, and stores it in that middle data mart database. They are aggressively getting rid of the legacy option. So going forward, everybody will have the data mart, that middle database that summarizes all of the details for us. So we still do have plenty of people who are still on that legacy option, but only for the older versions of Managed Reporter and certain versions of the GL.
All right. Let's see here. What is at what point is conversion used? Meaning, if I run a report in June for data in March, will it use the June conversion or the March conversion rate?
So if you run a report in June, but you run it for March, then it's going to be all your rates should be for the March rates, because you're looking at March data, March rates.
All right. How can you report on analytical accounting dimensions?
So if you have those set up inside Managed Reporter, they would show up as the same way as any of your other dimensions. So if I go look at a row, I double-click in column J, I get that pop-up box for my dimension window, segment 1, 2, and 3 for departments, accounts, divisions. You'd have another column for any of those other codes. And you can use those on any row of the report as well as any columns of the reports or the report entries. So we only have 4 columns here. You might end up with 5, 6, or 7 more columns.
All right. How do you show rows for previous quarter or quarter ending in March or other, I guess, other quarter definitions?
Rows or columns?
Rows.
Okay. Let's look at, yeah, it was kind of hidden here. So if I have this report running and the column definition that it uses is pulling March balances, but for this one row I want to pull January balances, I can go and double-click in column I for this row, change the account modifier, and I can do C. Well, I do /-2 to go 2 periods back. Okay. So you do have column I to override your column definitions to help you change the period references. You have C's off of current period balances from the GL database, year-to-date balances, beginning balances, or instead of this option, you can have columns in the column definition that pulls all the months you need. There are certain rows here are hidden but pull the balances, and you have calculated rows that just move the balances from wherever they are in the hidden columns down to the rows and columns where you want them to show up. That could get a little tricky, but if you need help after today, just shoot me an email.
All right. If you want to show encumbrance and pre-encumbrance alongside budget and actuals. Oh, I'm sorry. I think this was more of a note than a question. Can you link an Excel file to the row definition?
So you can pull balances from Excel into a row. If you do, so in this report, if I have certain rows here that will be pulling down from an Excel spreadsheet, in column J, the header, I double-click. This will not just be a column for financial dimensions. It'll be financial dimensions plus worksheet data. You'll tell Managed Reporter where that Excel file is located. I don't know if I have any handy. And if there's a particular name for the sheet in the database, in that Excel file where it's located, fill that in here. And then in column J, any references to the Excel cells should just be listed in column J, like at WKS A2. So yeah, any row here can be linked to individual cells in Excel or multiple cells.
All right. Can you get a breakdown of the balances outstanding on the GRNI account?
Not sure about that one. Breakdown on the outstanding, huh? You know, read it back to me one more time, Jason.
Can you get a breakdown of the balances outstanding on the GRNI account?
I don't know about that one. I'll see if I can come up with an idea for you, but I don't have it on top of my head.
All right. If a user has posted transactions without any dimension, how can we show that in reports?
Sorry, Jason, I was writing a note about that last one. You can read that to me again, please?
Yeah, if a user has posted transactions or a transaction without any dimensions, how can we show it in a report?
Right. So they would have posted at least to an account number, and to kind of summarize something that has no department per se. Let's look at the reporting tree I had here, and I had one part of this tree that had where it was pulling anything that was not assigned a department. So you just have segment 1, which is department for us, and in brackets, it's just blank.
Can we see how to create reports by days, days transactions? For example, one column for day 1.
Yep. So in the column definition, any column that pulls from financial dimensions, column B here, there's 2 fields at the bottom, start date and end date. You can double click, get the calendar, pick the exact day that you want to start and the exact day you want to stop.
All right. Can we run a report of consolidated balance sheet in columnar format for each legal entity?
Balance sheet in columnar format. So you'd have assets on the left and you'd have liability and equity on the right. Yep, that is doable. So in your row definition, I don't know if I have one of those handy. Let's see. Sheet, tabular, yep. You list out all your assets, and when you get down and you want the rest to go on the right-hand side of the report, you have a code for column C for column. And then everything else below there is shifted to the right-hand side of the reports.
All right. Can you combine data across 2 companies to create financial reports in Management Reporter?
You can. You have to have a reporting tree. So in the reporting tree, you'd have one row. Row 2 here would be the first company, and then the next one down would be the next company it pulls data from. All right, and then use that tree against the income statement or balance sheet or any other report, and it pulls balances from both those companies.
All right, and I think this is our last question here. Is it possible to use formulas like an if statement?
So in the row definitions, you can. So you've got, if you want to put an if statement in any row, it's a CAL format code, and then column D is your, you type in your formula. If, say, row code 370 is greater than $10,000, then put $4,500 there. Yeah, whatever would make sense, but yeah, if statements are fine. If and else statements are fine. Those work on any row here for CAL format codes.
We do have one more question. How can I create row definitions connected to each other?
So FRX would let you link from one row definition to another. Manage Reporter, you can only use one row definition for every part of a tree. You can have one report run, and then after that report runs, the next report can run and pull data from that first one. I have not put one of those together yet. I saw it listed. Not a big fan of it so far because you have to have that first report to run. But the option from FRX where you link from one row format code to another row format code is not supported.
All right, well, that takes us through all the questions that have come in. Thanks to everyone in the audience for entering them. And Noah, of course, thanks for taking the time to present them all and to answer so many questions for us.
No problem. Glad to be here. I hope to see some of you out in Reno next week.
Yeah, I second that. And with that, we're going to wrap things up today. So please do look for that survey as you exit. And let's just say thanks and have a great day.
Thanks, Jason.